Hello and welcome to Learning Target 4.2. This is all about homeostasis and feedback systems. By the end of this learning target, you should be able to explain how your body responds to a stimulus in order to maintain balance. So the first thing you need to know about this learning target is what a stimulus is. A stimulus is anything that triggers a response in the environment. Stimulus and response interplay with one another to make sure that your body remains balanced. Classic example of a stimulus is if you touch a hot stove. Before you know it, your hand is even away, and then a little bit later you say, ouch. This is a reflex response, but nonetheless, the stimulus was the hot stove, and the response was your body moving your hand away. And these are kind of reactions that are happening all the time in your body. Living things are constantly responding to stimuli. Plants sometimes bend towards the light. If you touch something like a millipede, it bends up and curls up to protect itself. When your eyes look at the sun, the pupils get smaller, and the same thing is true when your eyes are in the dark. The pupil gets larger, so you can have a better time seeing and bringing as much light as possible. And then also, thankfully, your body systems, all these different body systems, work together to maintain homeostasis by responding to different stimuli in the environment, in the internal environment as well as the external environment. And then, there's also this classic example of your reflex when the doctor hits your knee with a little hammer and it kind of kicks itself. That's a stimulus. It's the hammer, and the response is your leg moving a little bit. Excuse me. When you think about the word homeostasis, you should think about the word balance. Without homeostasis, your body would not be in balance. Although homeostasis is not just getting balanced and staying balanced, it's constantly going back and forth around the center. So you can see the graph down here on the bottom. It goes up and down around this even line. If we were to take the average of all those up and downs, we get this even balanced line. And that's because your body has to take some time to respond to the different stimulus and responses. And you'll see some examples about this later on in the video clip. Just to make a quick connection to a previous learning target, dynamic equilibrium is pretty similar to what we see happening in ecosystems when we talk about population size and carrying capacity. Once a population size gets to its maximum carrying capacity, or its peak, it then starts to go down because of a decrease in the amount of resources available. These would be known as limiting factors. And then once enough limiting factors come available, you see the population size start to going up. And this back and forth, up and down, is what we're talking about when we refer to dynamic equilibrium, maintaining homeostasis. This balance is not constant, it's an up and down cycle. Like I said, sometimes homeostasis gets disrupted, and that's a bad thing, because if your body gets too far out of homeostasis, if it's not in dynamic equilibrium, this can cause you to become ill, or even in certain cases, in death. So I'm going to give you 4 different examples of how your body maintains homeostasis, and it's maintained through something called feedback systems. And these feedback systems are a response to the environment, or a response to a stimulus, and they go back and forth. One classic example when we talk about these feedback systems is a thermostat in your home. When it gets too cold, for example, in your home, the heat kicks on. And then when the home gets warm, your home gets warm enough, your heat turns off and the temperature drops back down. So this back and forth, this up and down, this dynamic equilibrium, this homeostasis that's happening in your home, is also something that's happening in organisms and in your own body. So we're going to go through 4 classic examples of feedback systems in the next few slides. The first one is the maintenance of your body temperature. The second one is how your body responds to exercise. The third one is how plants regulate water. And the fourth one is how your body maintains its blood sugar levels. So the first one here we'll get into is how your body maintains its temperature, right? So when you get warm, there's a couple of ways that your body responds to the stimulus. A couple of ways that your body responds to make sure that you're in homeostasis. One of the things that happens is that your blood vessels, they begin to dilate, they begin to get larger, and this allows more blood to flow through them, and also more blood to come in contact with closer to the skin, and hopefully cool things down. If that doesn't work, your sweat glands become activated and you start to perspire. Just so you know, perspire means you're sweating. Your perspiration, an antiperspirant, is something that helps you stop sweating. Usually put it under your arms. The sweat, when it comes in contact with the air around you, actually has a cooling effect. So this sweat helps to cool you down. As you start cooling down, maybe you cool down too much or you go to a really cold environment, you're temporarily in balance, but it's dynamic, right? It goes a little bit out of balance. You stop sweating and you bring things back into normal. So you have this back and forth. The same thing is true when your body is really cold. When your body is really cold, your blood vessels begin to constrict, and they actually cut off blood flow to your extremities, like your hands and your feet are usually the first things that start to get cold, because those are non-essential to your body maintaining its internal temperature. Your internal organs are the ones that are most important for your life functions to keep you warm. And also, if you get really cold, you actually start to shiver. And this is actually one way that your body helps to heat yourself up. By making your muscles shiver, it's actually creating some warmth inside your body. And that hopefully will bring your body back up into homeostatic balance. So that's the first example of a feedback system. Another example here is what happens in your body when you do exercise. When you do exercise, the stimulus here is that in your cells, there's an increase in the rate at which cellular respiration is happening inside the mitochondria. And one of the byproducts of cellular respiration, or one of the wastes of cellular respiration, is carbon dioxide. And that stimulus is actually what causes your body to respond to try to get rid of that waste more quickly. And one of the things that your body does is to respond is that your pulse rate, or how fast your heart is beating, actually increases. And that removes waste, or carbon dioxide, at a faster rate than it was when it wasn't beating as quickly. The other response is your breathing increases. So you start to breathe more and more rapidly, and this gets rid of that carbon dioxide faster. Okay, once your body happens to have a faster heart rate and the breathing increases, hopefully you get rid of that waste, and then you can begin to slow down both the amount of breathing and your heart rate, and then you have this dynamic equilibrium that goes back and forth. Third classic example is from plants. We've learned about stomates. Stomates are those pores on the undersides of leaves. These help to regulate the amount of water that is in a plant. So it's not only gases, carbon dioxide in and the oxygen out, that's being regulated through these stomata, or these stomates on the underside of leaves, which, by the way, are being regulated by guard cells. You see here pictured on either side of the stomate, which is the pore. But these stomates also help to regulate the amount of water in a plant. Now, photosynthesis can only occur during the day, so the gas exchange in plants is only needed during the day for one reason, right, for photosynthesis. So during the day, the stomates are open, but at night, when the sun goes down, when photosynthesis isn't happening, the guard cells can close, and by doing that, it helps prevent any water from escaping from the plant. The same thing is true when it's really in dry conditions, when there's a drought, it hasn't rained in a while. Guard cells, as a last resort, can close up those stomates. They can close those pores to help keep water in. When conditions are more wet, it's able to actually open back up and allow water to flow freely through the plant. So this is a third example of a feedback system, the opening and closing, the responding to a stimulus inside of a plant. The last example, the one that you really need to know, is how your body regulates its blood sugar levels. When you eat a meal, particularly a sugary meal like the cupcake you see pictured here, the amount of sugar in your body increases. The amount of sugar in your blood increases. Now you want to try to maintain a balance with your blood sugar levels. So one thing that your body can do is release a hormone, and the hormone is released from your pancreas. Your pancreas releases a hormone called insulin, and what insulin does is it actually causes the amount of blood sugar to go down in your body. That sugar is stored temporarily in your liver. So you see with this back and forth, right, the blood sugar begins to drop. Well, if the blood sugar gets too low, your liver can release a different hormone called glucagon and raise the blood sugar levels back up. So you have this back and forth between your pancreas and your liver, between releasing of insulin or releasing of glucagon. Sometimes you'll hear the word secretions being used. Secretions just means something's being released. And in this case, the pancreas releases insulin to lower your blood sugar levels. Your blood sugar levels get too low, your liver can release glucagon, a hormone that increases your sugar levels. And it's this back and forth that your body's that maintain a relatively constant blood sugar level by dynamic equilibrium around an average. Too high, too low, you can get that nice little curve that you see in the graph previously. Now, what if your body isn't in homeostasis? Well, you can have diseases or other problems. And one of the problems that often arises with people with blood sugar levels is diabetes. Now you may know that there's two different types of diabetes. Type 1 is diabetes that you're born with, and these are people that have pancreas that is unable to make insulin. And they are usually diagnosed at this near childhood or when they're very young. Another type of diabetes called type 2 diabetes is also sometimes referred to as adult onset diabetes, and that can actually occur when people get to a certain age because of their diet most often or other complications. The insulin in their body no longer becomes sensitive to being able to reduce blood sugar levels. So what these people actually have to do is inject themselves with insulin. You may have seen someone one time testing their blood sugar levels with something like this, and then also some people have an insulin pump which is able to actually inject insulin into the body and then decrease blood sugar levels. And there's a sensor that people wear on their bodies that maintains the blood sugar levels, and when this happens, it's able to maintain that dynamic equilibrium and homeostasis in the blood sugar. Okay, that's the end of Learning Target 4.2. Talk to you later. See you next time.